Well, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today at this third day of the conference. My name is Lindsay Graham. I'm a Poverty and Inequality Commissioner for the Poverty and Inequality Commission in Scotland. The reflections that I will share with you today are personal to me, and I'm going to touch on what's happened during COVID as well. So I want to talk to you today a little bit about supporting disadvantaged communities, the importance of good food for all, and community planning and partnerships. You may have seen this illustration by Barbara Kelly, and it's entitled, "We are all in the same storm, but not in the same boat." And I think that's definitely what's happened during COVID when it comes to disadvantaged communities. And when we talk about disadvantaged communities, we're really talking about poverty. When it comes to food as well, there's some real gaps in our society that are widening for those living in disadvantaged communities. The poorest 20% of UK households would need to spend 39% of their disposable income on food to meet the Eat Well Guide costs, to eat healthily, in other words, as well. And children in deprived communities are more than 1 centimetre shorter on average than children in wealthier communities by the time they reach the age 11. Last year, the Trussell Trust Food Bank Network gave over 1 million emergency food parcels to people in crisis between April and September. And we're now in 2021, and that number is escalating. In the past year, 27% of our full-time workers, over 1 million people earning below the living wage, said that they'd skip meals regularly for financial reasons during the pandemic. And when we come to pay the rent or the mortgage or the fuel bills, food is the only part of our income that we can have flexibility with. So people are going without food so that they can pay their bills. And then we had a report from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation on destitution as well, and it said that 1 million households experienced destitution at some point in 2019. These households contained 2.4 million people, including over 500,000 children. And that was in 2019, pre-pandemic. Deeply troubling, deeply troubling. And COVID has impacted in our communities, and I know it's really shone a light on food insecurity, which is it's always been there, but it's been far more relevant and public during COVID. And impact has been on household income. We've had financial shock, sometimes for the first time for families. We're always that one paycheck away. We've had furlough, we've got mass redundancies and unemployment as well, hitting our communities. We've got increases in domestic violence, children at risk. We've got eating disorders going through the roof, and there's negative effects on mental health and well-being, social isolation, stress, all the kind of things that you're probably seeing in the media now as well. Families who were already in difficult circumstances, if you've been living in debt and poor housing, all this has been compounded by COVID as well. We have the elderly, and as a former community nurse, I remember how important good nutrition is for the elderly. We've got clinically vulnerable and shielded groups as well. And families with no recourse to public funds are deeply affected by this. And we mustn't forget the minority groups who are often left out of things, such as travellers. Our public services have been affected in places that traditionally help disadvantaged groups. Our libraries, places of worship, job centres, transport, and even our prisons have been affected by this. And that, it's reflected in some of the news that you've seen, the queues in the food banks as well. And that, again, is concern and should concern us all and should shame us all. So what I've been fortunate enough to be in connection with a lot of different organisations right around the UK during COVID, and I have seen some amazing leadership on supporting disadvantaged communities, particularly around food and access to food. Often from faith groups have been great as well, but local authorities have been good, and we've seen resource and investment from government for the first time in some, the magic money tree has all of a sudden appeared, and we've seen investment in going into the billions into our communities to keep them safe, and we're seeing new skills developing as well as how we get food to people that need it. I do admire, though, our local leaders, the people who have been working day in and day out in the charitable sector and the third sector, bringing skills and knowledge to credibility to projects where food aid has been particularly important. And I think that's something for the future we need to build on as well. The community partnerships we've seen, particularly food partnerships, I've seen some amazing community food partnerships and food projects who've been tremendous during growing projects, allotments, cooking projects, things that were really running along on a shoestring are now coming into their own, where budget has been found and planning is including them in supporting our communities. We need more of that, a lot more of that. Communication of how disadvantaged communities are supported has been crucial too. We've seen national helplines, we've seen websites bringing up, telling people where to get support. It has to be appropriate to reach all of those. We need to be thinking about people's different types of needs, language, accessibility needs to be thought of too. All these things have to regularly be reviewed, revised, and renewed to make sure that what we're doing is actually making a difference and having an impact. And when it comes to having an impact, public spend is something that we absolutely must think about when we're supporting disadvantaged communities. We have a tsunami of poverty approaching us and a recession like never before. So we need to be wise about what we're doing, and we need to be investing in more sustainable systems. And our local producers and providers, I have to say, have been amazing during this pandemic. So good food for all is important if we want to have a more equal society and one where everybody thrives. And we mustn't forget humanity in that. And that's people's right to food, and not just food, but good food. We're in the year of fruit and vegetables, FAO's year of fruit and vegetables as well. And I think that's something that some of the shielded packs that I saw on some of the food parcels weren't necessarily the best, but people deserve the best. All people deserve the best. It has to be accessible, affordable, appropriate, and adequate. And everybody has right to that. We also have to pandemic-proof our communities, including our disadvantaged communities. World Economic Forum has told us that we have future pandemics coming, and we're already seeing different strains of the pandemic now, which is something that is going to push the NHS to its limits. We have to advocate. We all have a duty to advocate for those less heard when it comes to food, and to remember them in everything that we do. We have to share new and innovative approaches like conferencing. We have this conference today being shared in a new way. So we must learn to share all the learning and the challenges, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and what we've learned about food and our disadvantaged communities and how we can make things better. We should always remember dignity and compassion. I think I've never seen such kindness and willingness to help from all sectors as I have done in this past year. And I've been working in food and food aid for about 20 years now. And I've never seen a year like it where people have just wanted to help. But we have to be even more resilient, and we have to plan, and we have to pay particular attention to the next generation who will be living post-pandemic and paying the price for that in ill health, in the economy, and through employment and housing and things like that. So we need to be paying particular attention to the next generation. We will need a change of our system, not just our food systems and the way that we get it, but of our benefit system, so that people have the adequate resource to buy the food that they need and the good food that they need. And in the world, the utopian world that I live in, I would love to think that our schools, when we transition back into them, will have free school meals for every child, not just in term time, but in the holiday times too. And that would be, for me, would be something amazing and great for young people, our future, to see. I think the final thing that I want to say to you today is that while COVID has taken over 100,000 souls, it has been challenging like nothing we've ever seen before. And we do have a tsunami of poverty ahead of us. It is also an opportunity for change, and we must take that opportunity and grasp it and change our systems so that they are fairer, more equitable, and give hope for the future. So I like this saying by C.S. Lewis that says, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start from where you are and change that ending. And I think we can, and I do believe that we can. So thank you for your time today.